Hello everyone, Jeff here with you for episode number 3 of the Wednesday Night Wrestling Blitz. I give my thoughts on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite and WWE NXT as I review both shows and I tell you which show I thought had the better action and gets my pick of the week. Plus, also, after we conclude this, I will have some final thoughts about the WWE Draft that I did not talk about on my podcast this week. So let's go ahead and talk AEW first. It came to us from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the LaCroix Center, home of Temple University. The opening match was a first-round matchup in the AEW World Tag Team Title Tournament. We had SAU, taken on the Best Friends. They did a deal here as SAU was coming out that the Lucha Brothers actually came out as SAU was coming out, and Lucha Brothers attacked SAU, and they did a deal where they did a package power driver to Daniels on the outside there on the ramp, and he was laid out with the package power driver. Scorpio Sky had come out to make the save to prevent the other guy, Kazarian, from receiving the same fate. They did a stretcher job here for Daniels. He was never to be seen again. So Scorpio Sky, after a little bit of pleading with the referee, is allowed to be in the match. So we have Kazarian and Scorpio Sky of SCU taking on Best Friends here. It's a good deal. Good deal here. The crowd was definitely hot for it. A lot of good high-flying action here from both sides. And ultimately, they go back and forth for a while. Of course, one of the things was we saw Scorpio Sky actually come into the match wearing just one shoe, which was kind of an interesting look. But ultimately, in the end, SCU does get the win. They hit the combination powerbomb and drop kick for the win on the Best Friends, and SCU does advance. As I figured they were going to anyway, so they were my pick. So they will be advancing to take on the Dark Order in the semifinals of the AEW World Tag Team Championship Tournament. So I thought it was a pretty good match. You have to go back and watch it. A lot of good action from both teams here. Next up, we had tag team action. We had Santana and Ortiz, the former LAX, in Impact Wrestling. They took on John Silver and Alex Reynolds. Basically a showcase for Santana and Ortiz. Silver and Reynolds get a little bit of offense early, but mostly Santana and Ortiz doing their thing. They ultimately win in the end with the Street Sweeper, which is the combination blockbuster off the top rope into the sit-down powerbomb on the Silver for the win. And then after the match, Jericho appeared on the screen to basically put over his teammates and set up perhaps a challenge on the November 9th Full Gear pay-per-view showdown between Santana Ortiz and the Young Bucks. So he challenged the Young Bucks to accept the challenge. We'll see if they do going forward. Next up was the AEW Women's title match. We had Rio defending the AEW Women's title. Of course, she just won the title here recently. She takes on Dr. Britt Baker here. I honestly thought this was the weakest match on the show. It was a little slow, a little sloppy at times for my liking, more so from Britt Baker. But maybe that's more because they just haven't had that chemistry of being in the ring together yet. So it was a little slow for my liking. They eventually do get it going. Towards the end of the match here, Britt Baker's trying to go for her lockjaw, but then it was countered by Rio on a roll-up and actually got the win with it. So Rio retained the title, as she should have. I figured she was retaining. I figured it was too early for Britt Baker to be winning the title. I do think at some point she does win the title, but I thought it was way too soon here. And they did shake hands afterwards, so no heel turn here for Britt Baker, at least not right now. Next up, we had another AEW Tag Team Championship Tournament match. Here we had the Lucha Bros, who we saw attack SCU earlier. They came out to take on what was supposed to be Jungle Express, but Luchasaurus was pulled out of the match because of injuries. So Marco Stunt actually stepped in to team with Jungle Boy here for the match. So, in other words, they got a lot of offense instead of Jungle Boy did, which turned out to be a pretty good match overall. But ultimately, in the end, I actually thought this was a surprise because I thought the Jungle Express were actually going to win this match. The Lucha Bros ultimately do win in the end. They win with the Zero Mercy, which is the combination foot stomp off the top rope into the package power driver. They hit that on Marco Stunt, so they keep Jungle Boy strong by not beating him. They beat Marco Stunt here, so the Lucha Bros will advance to the semifinals where they'll be taking on Private Party. So, a little bit of a surprise. I figured Jungle Express was actually going to go to the finals here. Next up, another tag team match. We have Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. They took on Moxley and Pac, the former Neville, of course. This was everything you expected it to be. A lot of high-flying spots, a lot of ground and pound, a lot of everything you expected here. We finally did get Omega and Moxley together in the ring. They did face off, and it pretty much played as you guys would have expected. Eventually, we see towards the end of the match here that Omega and Moxley had gone under the ring to get the barbed wire objects. Pac, realizing that Moxley was about to get their team disqualified, intervened by taking the weapon out of Moxley's hands, and he actually took it out of Omega's hands as well. And Pac inadvertently got his finger caught in the barbed wire and actually was bleeding if you paid close attention. Moxley didn't like that. He gave him the double burn, and then he hit the Death Rider, I should say, which is the double underhook DDT, and he left him for dead. And then eventually Omega and Page got in their final shots, and then they ultimately won the match after Hangman had hit his finisher, the arrow, I believe it's what it is. So Omega and Page get the win. I actually thought Moxley and Pac were going to win the match for some reason, but yep, they gave Omega and Hangman Page a win here. So, and it was confirmed later on that Moxley and Pac will have a match next week on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite. So we have that. We had a nice video package that was focusing on Cody's challenge for Chris Jericho's AEW World Title here, and for that upcoming match at Full Gear, and then he also talked about what winning the title would mean for his legacy. Ooh. So, but overall, it was a good video package. Even if you've not seen it, go back and check that out. It's pretty well done. We actually got some context there. Finally, in the main event of the evening for the AEW World Title, we had Chris Jericho defending that title against Darby Allin. This was a Philadelphia street fight, and yes, all the weapons do come into play here. This was a great match. These two told a great story. Allin got a chance to really shine here. He hit a lot of high-flying spots, and they ultimately did a deal. Jericho got his stuff in. He used the kendo stick in a chair during the match, and because he took advantage of the rules as well, as did Allin. And then at one point, we see Darby Allin get his hands taped behind his back. But yet, Allin still managed to fight Jericho off with his hands tied behind the back using various drop kicks and dives and all that kind of stuff, and nearly pulled off the upset. But ultimately, in the end here, Jake Hager ran in and delivered a shot to Allin that allowed Jericho to lock in the walls of Jericho and got the submission victory. So, a great match. Jericho retaining the right outcome here, but still, this was a great match here, and the crowd was definitely into it. And then following the match, the Inner Circle did come out to the ring for a champagne celebration to have a little bit of the bubbly, as Jericho likes to say, as they went off the air. So, again, AEW, really good stuff here. Let's see how well NXT did. Of course, NXT was from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. They opened with Tommaso Ciampa, his first action back since coming back from the injury. He took on Angel Garcia here. Basically a showcase for Ciampa. Garcia did a little bit of stuff here early on here, but ultimately Ciampa rather was able to recover. Ciampa took him out here, and eventually in the end he hit what looks to be maybe one of his new finishers. He hit the Widow's Bell, which is a draping DDT off the ropes, kind of like what we've seen from Randy Orton, and it was good enough to get the win. I thought it was about an average match here. I know Ciampa still clearing off the ring rust here. I didn't think there was a whole lot towards this match, but Ciampa did get the win nevertheless. So after Ciampa had won, we see Undisputed come out. We see Ciampa grabbing the steel chair and the crutch, and then we see Kyle O'Reilly walk over to Mauro Ranallo at the commentary table and threw him a USB drive. What was on that USB drive? Well, we would find out after a commercial. They showed what was on the video. They said it was safe enough for it to be aired on television. It showed that the Undisputed Era had laid out Velveteen Dream backstage, and then that's what it was. So they were basically setting up that they're going to be around and they're waiting to get after Tommaso Ciampa, so we'll see what happens there. And then following that, what we saw in that video, we saw William Regal announce that Dream would not be able to compete against Roderick Strong for the North American title. And then he announced that the winner of the Keith Lee Dominic Dijakovic match, that winner would get the title shot. They would get the #1 contendership and get that title opportunity. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we had tag team action. We had Fabian Aichner and Marcel Barthel taking on Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. It was a good match. I thought the finish here looked pretty good here. Towards the end of the match here, with Burch down outside the ring, Aichner had hit a brainbuster followed by a double springboard moonsault on the Lorcanen, but only got a 2 count. It was not the finish of the match. However, ultimately a spinebuster followed by a flying European uppercut bow bomb combination did get the job done here, and Aichner and Barthel won the tag team contest. So really not a big surprise considering what's been going on here. We got a pre-taped interview with Johnny Gargano, basically talking about his feelings about Ciampa. He says he doesn't know what his feelings are going to be until he sees Ciampa face-to-face now that Ciampa's back in NXT. Next up, we had women's action with Io Shirai taking on Kaden Carter here. Carter got the early jump here, but ultimately Io Shirai was able to quickly regain the momentum and get the quick win here ultimately in the end. She hit the Empress Release German suplex into the moonsault for the 1-2-3 and got the very quick win here. She grabs the mic and then she contends that she is the #1 contender for Shayna Baszler's NXT Women's title, not Rhea Ripley or Bianca Belair. Ripley does come out. She grabs the mic after going into the ring out of Sherrod's hand and basically told her to never speak of her name. And then ultimately Io Shirai backed down and just left. So other than that, that's what we had there. It wasn't a whole lot to the match. It was more of a showcase for Sherrod. Next up is what was supposed to be that #1 contenders match with Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic. We see a strength test early on. We see Lee get control off the middle rope, and then he had hit this big frog splash onto Dijakovic's injured left arm, which was a cool looking visual. And then Lee eventually followed with a powerful spirit bomb, and then, however, Djokovic rolled out of the ring to avoid the pinning attempt, and then he eventually took the momentum back shortly with a cyclone kick, and then Lee regained the control of the match here. He was able to eventually hit a vertical suplex, and then we see Lee, who was found on top of Dijovic's shoulders in the electric chair position, and then he was able to counter that with this great-looking Poison Rana for a very cool visual that the crowd really bought. Hook, line, and sinker. Ultimately, as Dijakovic attempted a Hurricanrana on Keith Lee, Roderick Strong came out of nowhere, ran into the ring, and attacked both guys with his belts to end the match in no contest. And then we see Regal up on this platform stage to get on the microphone immediately after and declare that next week's match for the North American title will be a triple threat match with the two guys we just saw and Roderick Strong. I was not a big fan of the finish. It's a decent match. It's a good match. I didn't like the finish here so much. They clearly didn't want to beat either guy clean here, so we get this triple threat match, and I think Roderick Strong's going to win and retain next week anyways, so we have that. Next up, more singles action. We have Matt Riddle taking on Bronson Reed here. Riddle gets the early jump on Reed, and then he had hit the bro to sleep, and then he hit the gut wrench powerbomb and hit the final flash. Reed was able to get out of it with just only being down for a 2 count. Riddle did try to go for his corkscrew moonsault. Reed caught him, and then he hit him with a sit-down powerbomb after that. Riddle was able to recover, though, and he attacked Reed ultimately in the end with the Bro Derek. That's a play off Bo Derek, of course, and he got the win with it, which is almost like a tombstone power driver, but it's more of like a tombstone slam instead of a tombstone power driver. That was enough to get the win. And basically, Riddle continues his march forward here, so we have that. This was one of the matches I was looking forward to next. The return of Tegan Knox. She takes on Tynera here. Of course, this is Knox's first match back after tearing her ACL in the Mae Young Women's Classic. We see Knox wearing braces on both knees here. Again, she's trying to knock off the ring rust here. This, I thought, was a little bit slow for my liking. Tanina, let's see if I can say her name. Tanira got in some offense early on, but Knox was able to recover. She ultimately hit the European uppercut, then into a choke slam and then ultimately a diving cross body block, and then ultimately in the end she hit the shiniest wizard for the win. After that, she was being interviewed at ringside. Dakota Kai comes out to congratulate her. And then we see the Horsewoman, the MMA version of the Horsewoman. They come out the ringside for a little bit of trash talk, but no fisticuffs, nothing here. Knox gets the win. Really to the surprise of nobody. I thought it was just kind of a so-so match. We get a pre-taped promo from Finn Balor. He's talking about coming to a crossroads in his career and needed to retrace his steps to find himself again. He is back in NXT to find his heart, and he'll begin that journey on next week's NXT, so he'll have his first return match, it appears, on next week's NXT program. Next up, we had Killian Dane taking on Boa here. Boa got the early jump. Ultimately, Killian Dane was able to recover. Dane ultimately took control of the match back in the ring with a trio of Vader bombs, and then he got Boa into the half Nelson clutch submission for the tap out, and again, pretty much just a squash to show off Killian Dane here. Again, just a so-so match. And then in the final match of the night, your main event for the evening, we had Damian Priest taking on Pete Dunne. Killian Dane was still out near the aisle there as Pete Dunne was coming out. A little bit of taunting, I guess, from Dane. Ultimately, Pete Dunne goes to do the deal where he snaps off the digits on Killian Dane. Nice sell job by him. This match here, Damian Priest and Pete Dunne, was easily the best match on the show. They go back and forth for quite a while here. Both guys look good. Ultimately, in the end, a bit of a surprise here. You know, we see Priest lift Dunne for a crucifix bomb. Dunne grab the fingers. They get into the corner. The referee's in between them. Priest hit Dunne with a low blow. Took advantage with the Reckoning to pick up the win. So, sure enough, Damian Priest gets a surprise win over Pete Dunne here. And then we have that. So, again, go back and watch this match if you did not see it. This was the best match on the show. And that's what I have to say about that. Which show is my pick of the week? For the first 2 weeks since I've been doing this, I picked NXT. This week, AEW clearly won the night. They had the better action. I thought NXT, besides the main event, I thought NXT was just kind of a middle-of-the-road show here this week. I thought AEW had the better action from start to finish. AEW is my pick of the week. So through 3 weeks, I have NXT winning 2 rounds, and AEW is on the board with 1 round. So we have that. And finally, just some quick thoughts about the WWE Draft. I talked mostly about this on my podcast this week, but a couple of things I wanted to mention I did not mention on the podcast. We saw Stephanie McMahon do these picks. I mean, my God. I actually kind of felt sorry for her. I really did. She kind of, just went out there and kind of went through the motions. She had no emotions in her. She came off like a complete robot here. It's clear that she wanted nothing to do with this, and, it was kind of, I actually felt sorry for her, I really did. This was clearly not a Stephanie McMahon idea here, and then I thought the execution of the draft was just terrible. The WWE, let me say this, they had the opportunity to write the narrative and get things back on track here. This draft they did was a complete waste of time. 95% of the talent stayed right where they were. This was clearly WWE taking this draft not very seriously at all. This clearly came off to me as like Fox wanted this draft and WWE, because they're getting paid $1 billion over 5 years by Fox, they just decided to go along with it and kind of half-assed it, if you ask me. So, just a poor job overall here, and then really, for the most part, there were no big surprises, like I said, so except maybe Bray Wyatt going to SmackDown. But again, just some final thoughts about WWE Draft. They did a horrendous job. This was awful. They really, like I said, had a chance to change the narrative. They didn't do it, so they get what they deserve. That's just my opinion on that, so there you go. So, once again, AEW wins for the week. They're on the board now. NXT has 2 wins for the start so far, and AEW is on the board with their first win. So there you go. That is the conclusion of the episode number 3 of the Wednesday Night Wrestling Blitz here. Thanks for checking us out. We'll see you the next time. Bye for now, everyone.
For the JBSN Media Network, this is Jenna Green speaking.